If this body was worth what it claims to be, what it is, every single one of us would be demanding peace in Ukraine between these countries, peace for these people, so that no more of them have to die.
That was Representative Margerie Taylor Greene from Georgia speaking on the floor of the House of Representatives Saturday as the House discussed $61 billion more for Ukraine and another $30 billion to be allocated between Israel and Taiwan.
But you never hear anybody demanding peace. No. Peace is the last thing Washington wants because it doesn't fit the business model. This is a business model that they say continues our economy, protects American jobs. What a disgusting business model.
Greene went on to argue that the money being sent abroad to fight wars that are endless and pointless, in her words, was desperately needed at home.
We should have a business model that builds up our American companies and American jobs to serve American interests, and our military and our government should care about protecting the national security of the United States of America and the Americans that pay their hard-earned tax dollars to fund all of this. America last. America last. That's all this is. Every single day, America last.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
For more on that, we go to Philadelphia to speak with Professor Tony Monteiro at the Saturday Free School. Professor Monteiro, a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, I was more than impressed with Congresswoman Margerie Taylor Greene's amendment to the bill for $61 billion to fund a war in Ukraine that is being lost as we speak. I felt she was more than courageous, but you know, there are two other sides to it besides the business model that she spoke about, and I thought that was apt to speak of it that way. Business of the government being to fund military-industrial corporations and to keep war going. I thought that was a very apt way to describe the relationship between our so-called elected representatives and the military-industrial complex. But I think there is another aspect or two other aspects. One is Margerie Taylor Greene speaking for herself, which I don't think she is. I think she represents a wide swath of the American people who are tired of funding wars when they are suffering under inflation and austerity and the inability to imagine a future for themselves and their children and their grandchildren. So I think Margerie Taylor Greene is, as they like to say, a populist fighting for peace. The second part of it is the politics of this. And as you have pointed out, every Democrat voted for this, which is to say something that we have spoken about in the past, that the war in Ukraine is a Democratic Party war. It is a war provoked by the Biden administration, and it is a war they are losing, and they can't afford to be seen as losing Biden's war in the middle of a very close, very tight presidential election. I think that perhaps this election will be decided by the anti-war forces on both sides of the political spectrum, whatever that political spectrum is these days. In other words, those who identify themselves as Democrats versus those who identify themselves as Republicans and independents. What we are seeing is a rebellion in the Democratic Party against the funding of Israel and the genocide in Gaza. And that's huge. And that will decide the election, the presidential election in Michigan. The Israeli anti-Zionist forces in Michigan. On a larger spectrum, I think the anti-Ukraine funding will decide the election not only in Georgia, where Margerie Taylor Greene is from, but I believe in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, and in Michigan. I believe this is even a more popular position, more populist position, if you will, than the border is. That is, funding for war is a difficult issue for Biden and his forces to overcome, the opposition to funding for war. And I think once they connected, as Margerie Taylor Greene did, to the border, to the labor question that unmanaged and uncontrolled immigration brings up. In other words, these people are not being invited into the United States because we're concerned about human rights in El Salvador, but they are being invited into the United States because they constitute cheap labor without any rights at all. It is a corporate program, a corporate scheme. So I think we're looking at the tide shifting so decisively against the war makers that I don't think Biden can win the election.
It's Matt Gaetz is in Florida, and he's taken this position also. So I assume he's got his ear to the ground somewhere there. And you have 110 other votes too, and I'm wondering as they're smattered across the map, because I haven't had a chance to do that analysis, but how that fits into the model that you described. Because I agree, I think that's exactly what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you talk about elected officials, outside of a very few, and Margerie Taylor Greene is one of them, perhaps the young woman congresswoman from Pittsburgh, young black woman, and maybe Cori Bush from St. Louis, Missouri, to give examples, maybe a couple more. They are principled in their position against these wars, either the genocide in Gaza or the war in Ukraine. Now, they are not united. We do not have yet a anti-interventionist, anti-war alliance among members of Congress. We don't have that yet. However, we are beginning to see something like that coming into existence. And that's what we should be encouraging. That's what we should be supporting.
Professor Monteiro, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.